Unexplained Terror. 7 sinister stories of cursed souls revealed on a stormy, haunted night. The storm rolled in like a dark wave, swallowing the last remnants of evening light. Thunder rattled the windows of Sarah's small house, a modest home that stood on a street flanked by neat, unassuming houses. As she trudged home from her long shift at the diner, images of diner patrons faded in and out of her mind. She could almost hear the clinking of plates and the sizzling of the grill as drops of rain began to pelt the pavement. The comforting sounds were drowned by the howling wind, which loomed above, whispering unsettling secrets. She shivered as an agonizing electrical charge pulsed in the air. Shadows twisted in the corners of her vision, lurking beyond her yard, dancing like lost souls, waiting to reclaim what was once theirs. The trees shivered under the storm's breath, revealing gnarled symbols in the bark, illuminated briefly by errant flashes of lightning. What were they? The fear gnawed at her gut. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The quaint neighborhood had always felt safe, until now. Inside, Sarah found her son, Timmy, hunched over his drawing table. His small frame tangled in shadows, the light revealing disturbing details on the paper spread before him. Eerie caricatures of their neighbors stared back, grotesque, wide-eyed, and sinister. As he scribbled with fervor, each line seemed to pull the very essence of the darkness in their midst. "Honey, what are you working on?" she asked, forcing a smile that felt like a mask on her face. "Secrets, Mom," he muttered, lost in a trance. Dread twisted in her stomach. He had been having nightmares, strange visions that seemed to bleed into his art. Were they just childhood fantasies? Or something darker? The wind picked up, rattling the windows, and loomed over her, pushing her into a spiral of worry. Mr. Jenkins, their friendly neighbor, appeared at their door, his face tight with agitation. "Sarah, I need you to stop asking about the legends," he said, voice grave. "Some things are better left alone." She felt the chill of his authority. It sent shivers down her spine. Was this the man who had once borrowed sugar if she needed it? He was different now. Something was hidden beneath his surface. "Mr. Jenkins," her voice caught as he stepped closer, the storm reflecting in his eyes. Every word dripped with underlying menace. He had turned into a shockingly sinister figure, causing her heart to race with primal fear. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the wind screamed outside, the shadows seemed to close in tighter. Sarah's concerns, dismissed by the town's authorities, left her feeling isolated. What did she know? But then she found an online folklore group as the storm swelled in strength, discussing the cursed souls bound to these lands, and her heart raced. With each word she read, her family's history intertwined with the townsfolk's dark legends invaded her thoughts. The helplessness clawed at her, gnawing deeper, until it settled on a terrifying conclusion. Could Mr. Jenkins somehow embody the darkness plaguing her family? The blood-curdling scream pierced the stormy night, echoing, rattling her bones, leaving her breathless. The terror twisted its roots into her heart. Entwined with the mystery, their modern tranquility was merely a thin veil cloaking the very abyss she was trapped in. The urge to uncover the truth clawed inside her. But would it save her, or would it consume her whole? The atmosphere thickened, coiling around Sarah like a sinister fog. Her thoughts spiraled as she strained to hear over the pounding rain. A second scream piercing the night. This time, it sounded closer, somewhere beyond the darkened window. Timmy stood frozen. His little hands gripped the table, eyes wide with fright. "Mom," he whispered, barely above a breath. "What was that?" "I don't know, honey." "Stay close," she stammered, her heart hammering against her ribs. She peered out the window, trying to make out the shapes blurred by rain and fear. All she could see were the swaying branches, dark figures seeming to bend and twist against the flashes of lightning. They looked almost alive. Just then, a loud bang echoed through the house, vibrating the walls. Sarah staggered back, panic gripping her. It had come from the basement, the very place she avoided. Opening that creaking door was not a choice. It was a challenge against whatever was lurking in the shadows. "Timmy, stay up here," she commanded, voice wavering with dread. She felt like a candle flickering in the wind, ready to be snuffed out. But what if it's someone who needs help? He was still staring out, oblivious to the malevolence lurking just out of view. Nervously swallowing her fear, Sarah steeled herself and treaded toward the basement door. With every creak of the old wood, the chill threatening to swallow her whole deepened. She hesitated, the memories of friends from the diner who warned her about the cursed history of their town flooding her mind. "Once you hear the screams, there's no escape." The words rang with chilling clarity. In folklore, various dark tales lingered about those who penetrated the cursed area's disappearances. Shadows that drew you in and never let you go. She gripped the doorknob, feeling the cold metal seep into her bones. A jagged flash of lightning illuminated her path as she pulled it open, revealing stairs that spiraled into darkness. Each step down echoed with a haunting finality that felt like the world's heartbeat slowing around her. "Mom!" Timmy's voice trembled, breaking through her reverie. He clutched his drawing pad closely, the monstrous sketches of their neighbors twisting and warping before her eyes in impossible ways, begging for release from the paper. "Stay up there," she shouted harshly, her own fear spilling over. The last threads of her resolve tugged as she started down, one trembling step at a time. The air grew colder, dense with a palpable sense of dread. The screaming had stopped, but the echo lingered like a ghost refusing to fade. As she reached the bottom, the darkness swallowed her whole. Musty smells of mildew and rot clawed at her throat, and she couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her from the shadows. Suddenly, she heard a low, guttural whisper. It surged from every corner of the room. "Find us! Find us!" Panic surged as she turned toward the source of the sound, the shadows tightening around her. "Timmy!" she cried, wrenching around to run back up the stairs, but something tugged at her ankle. As she looked down, a skeletal hand emerged from the darkness, bony fingers curling around her leg, pulling her closer to whatever horror lay below. Desperation coursed through her veins. She screamed, wrenching free from its grasp, but the closer she got to the stairs, the harder the pull became. She sensed more figures emerging from the depths, drawn by her fear. Just as she reached for the banister, the lights flickered one last heartbeat from the overhead bulb before plunging her into complete darkness. Sarah gasped, frozen in terror, that whisper echoing again. "You shouldn't have come here." The air grew thick, bitter with the taste of despair. Was it too late to escape whatever cursed existence had seeped into her very home? And then a new sound broke through the door to the basement slammed shut, sealing her fate for someone else to choose whether it was salvation or doom. As she braced for the inevitable, the shadowy figures formed into haunting silhouettes closer than she had ever felt, and the storm raged on. Above, indifferent to her ordeal, was her family cursed to join them? With her heart in her throat, an ominous thought lingered. What if the darkness already had its claws in Timmy too? The darkness pressed down around Sarah like a suffocating weight, the whispers slithering through her mind. Fear twisted like snakes in her stomach as she fought the urge to retreat, to race back into the light. The shadows swelled around her, flickering, whispering, beckoning her deeper as if they were alive and waiting. "Timmy!" she shouted, her voice ragged and thin. No response, just the echo of her own dread trickling through that ominous silence. The oppressive air crackled with energy, tinged with the musty scent of decay. What was down there? What was pulling at her? With trembling hands, she felt along the damp, chilling walls, her heart pounding in her ears. It felt like the basement was breathing, almost as if it was alive and enjoying her panic. The only light came sporadically from the distant flashes outside, illuminating grotesque shapes that writhed in the corners of her vision. "Find us!" The whisper curled around her again, seductive and menacing. She gasped as a cold draft brushed against her cheek. A rush of wind that didn't belong in that confined space. Felt wrong, almost like a hand was tracing her jawline. The thought made her skin crawl. With a surge of adrenaline, she pressed forward, moving deeper into the shadows. "Timmy!" She cried again, louder this time, desperation flooding her voice. Only silence greeted her. She could still feel something close behind, the sensation of eyes boring into her back. Each step forward felt like crossing a threshold into something dark and unforgiving. Then she saw it, a pale glow emanating from the far end of the basement. It pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the silhouettes of fragmented shapes. They twisted and morphed, forming into what might have been faces, mouths stretching in awful silent screams. Instinct kicked in. She took a step back, but it was too late. The grip of fear tightened around her chest. She had to know what was there. "Stay with me, Timmy," she cried into the void, a final plea, praying she would hear her son's voice instead of the damned chorus of the shades surrounding her. But the glow drew her in. It was intoxicating. A desperate, inexplicable urge surged in her veins. She focused on the light, willing it to reveal the truth of what lay ahead. As her resolve crumbled, the shapes seemed to shiver and dart, merging into the glow as they beckoned her forward. The air was rank and fetid, like rot and despair incarnate. She reached out, unsteady. Her fingertips brushed against an unseen wall, slick and cold, and with it came a rush of sadness, of despair so thick it felt tangible. She barely stifled a cry. Within it lay the echoes of every lost soul that had passed through this cursed home. "Mom!" Timmy's voice, a fragile whisper almost drowned out by the thunder above. It sent a jolt through her, clarity cutting through the fog of her fear. She spun around, heart racing in recognition. "Timmy, where are you?" She felt a fierce panic churn in her stomach. "Mom, help me." His voice was nearer now, strained and terrified. She hesitated, glancing back towards the light as dread clawed at her. The whispers intensified, rising to a fevered pitch, blocking out rational thought. "Join us. Join us." The pull of the shadows was strong, compelling, like a current pulling her into the depths. But Timmy needed her. He had to be safe. With newfound determination slicing through her terror, she turned and ran, forcing her way through the darkness, calling his name. "Timmy, I'm coming. Hold on." But as she stumbled through the pitch darkness, the shapes lurked close behind, and in her frantic search, she knew something much darker was after them. Then the screams returned, echoing in a haunting chorus, each cry a shard of ice running down her spine. They weren't just sounds. They were a promise of what awaited, of what the shadows yearned to claim. Desperation washed over her. Would she reach him in time? Or could it already be too late? Outside, the storm raged on, each crash of thunder merging with the chaos of her mind. And in the shadows, something sinister smiled, waiting to see how far she would go to save her child as she ran blindly. A shrill laughter pierced the air, leaving her frozen in her tracks. What had she unleashed? Sarah stood frozen, breathless. The laughter echoed around her, weaving in and out of the shadows, mocking her fear. It felt like 1,000 chilling fingers curling around her throat, squeezing tight. Each breath was a battle, the stale air heavy with despair. "Timmy!" she shouted again, the name ripping from her throat, desperate. Fear swallowed her voice as the darkness responded with unsettling silence. That a gust of cold wind surged, pushing her forward. She stumbled, her foot catching on something slick and vile in the murk. She fought to regain her balance as her heart drummed a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The sound of distant thunder overlapped the whispering voice. "Find us, join us." Was it a command? Or a promise? Panic clawed at her as she realized how right it felt to listen to surrender to the shadows. "No, I need to find my son." The words slashed through the fog of temptation. With resolve hardened, she pressed onwards, driven by the powerful urge of a mother's love. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting her, promising safety within its embrace. But as she neared, the laughter intensified, shifting into a cacophony of jeering voices. "Come play with us." Sarah, her heart dropped. They knew her name. The darkness wasn't just an entity. It was a malevolent consciousness, feeding off her dread. Pushing through the cloying fears, Sarah leaned against a wall. It was covered in something damp and sticky blood? No, it was worse. She felt visions bombard her, fragments of past horrors. A woman sobbing quietly, children crying, all trapped, their faces overshadowed by a grim inevitability. "Timmy!" she shouted, louder now, strength emerging from her voice like a blade. Then she heard a faint rustling, followed by a soft whimper. "Mom, Timmy, where are you?" The terror in his voice cut deeper than any knife. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. She followed the sound, moving faster despite the clamoring of the ghosts behind her. Shadows flickered, darting between her, reaching for her but never quite touching. Were they warning her off or urging her to stay? The whispers grew restless, thrumming through her like an electric current. Join us, Timmy's voice came again, clearer now, just ahead. "Mom, please." A pulse of pure adrenaline surged through her. She felt close now, nearing a doorway where a stark light broke through the suffocating darkness. She could see the outline of her son, trembling, casting a terrified glance at the ominous void behind him. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." Then, just as she reached the threshold, the laughter morphed into deafening shrieks, a final warning. Tendrils of shadow snaked towards her, desperate and hungry. It was all around her now, suffocating her resolve, almost pleading. "Stay with us," her heart hammered in her chest. A shudder rippled through her as she broke through the veil into the light. But it didn't feel right. The space was filled with silhouettes, flickering like a half-remembered nightmare. And at the center was something monstrous, eyes glinting with malice, grinning in twisted delight. "Where do you think you're going?" It spoke, the words dripping with a sickening glee. Sarah felt her breath hitch, the darkness wrapping around her in cold, suffocating tendrils. "Timmy!" she cried, turning to where she thought he stood. But he was gone, swallowed by the light, just like the shadows had promised. A sudden realization struck her. The very thing she sought could also be the ultimate deception. "What have you done?" she whispered, trembling. The shadows laughed, a horrible symphony of voices swirling around her. And behind her, something shifted in the darkness. She turned, dread flooding her veins. Was it watching? Waiting? The laughter faded, replaced by an insidious stillness as the true horror curled in the darkness, lurking just out of sight. "Mom, I'm here." Timmy's voice echoed, but it sounded distant, distorted by the twilight. Desperation hit her like a punch to the gut. She had to choose. The shadows surged, pulling her back, the chance slipping away like wisps of smoke. She reached for Timmy. Would she grab him back from the grasp of darkness? Or would she be lost forever? Then the shadows seemed to expand, engulfing her, the darkness promising her not just her son, but everything she ever feared. And just then, from the heart of the blackness, a low hiss seeped into her mind. Join us. Did she dare take the next step into oblivion? Or could she somehow hold on to hope amidst the oncoming darkness? The storm raged outside, wind wailing like the voices within, drowning her with chilling uncertainty. What would it cost her to save her child? The shadows twitched as Sarah stood at the precipice of her own despair, squeezed by icy tentacles of darkness that whispered treachery. Each pulse of silence throbbed around her, suffocating her resolve, making it nearly impossible to think straight. She had lost Timmy, but at what cost? "Mom, please." Timmy's voice fractured the hollow silence, sounding closer, yet painfully distant, like a fading echo of hope. She had to push through. With another jagged breath, she turned back to the light, her last beacon in this sea of terror. Yet, the monstrous figure at its center lingered, its eyes blazing wide like a cat ready to pounce. "You want him?" it taunted, the voice smooth yet insidious. "He's already part of us." Sarah's blood turned to ice, realization striking with the force of a thunderclap. The shadows weren't just adversaries. They were a twisted collective of lost souls, feeding off fear and despair. They had been waiting for her, luring her closer. "Get away from him," she screamed, convinced this was a test of will. She clawed her way back to the shimmering glow, heart racing in self-defense. But the shadows laughed deep, rumbling mirth that twisted her stomach into knots. "Join us, Sarah. It will be so much fun," it was begging her now, fanning the last flickers of her doubts. Yet, the thought of Timmy, vulnerable and alone, pushed her forward. Step after step, she felt the grip of the darkness tighten around her ankles as her feet pounded against an invisible ground. She refused to give in. "Timmy, I'm coming." The monstrous figure shifted, blocking her path. "Are you sure? What if he is gone? What if you can't find him?" The air thickened. Sarah felt the weight of every awful thought rush over her, threatening to drown her in despair. No, she wouldn't listen. She couldn't afford to. Beyond the looming figure, a spark flickered in the void, a glimmer of something real, something alive. "Mom, I'm scared." Timmy's voice sliced through the shadows, pure and full of dread. Tendrils of darkness lunged at her, grasping at her like the hands of the damned. She twisted, momentum carrying her into the light, even as the shadows whispered sweet nothings, reviling her resolve. "Stay with us, free yourself, don't you see? The truth is all around you, go to hell," she shouted, adrenaline blasting her forward. Surging past the figure, focused only on that flicker in the void. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of anguish morphing into fury. "You can't leave. You belong to us now." With a final push, Sarah burst through the luminous barrier. She found herself in a vast chamber, walls pulsating with a sickly light. But it was empty. There were no comforting arms to find her, no familiar warmth, just a profound echo of her heart drumming louder than ever, amplifying the silence around her. "Timmy," she cried again, desperation clawing at the edges of her mind. A low rumble of laughter echoed back, and with it came the sick smell of decay. Shadows flickered to life around her, forming faces twisted in agony. "Timmy is with us forever," the world twisted, colors bleeding into one another. She couldn't let it end like this. The darkness around her shifted, a pulse of its own, alive and writhing, beckoning. "Join us," it moaned, the voices melding into something far worse than any nightmare. Then, in the midst of the chaos, Sarah caught a glimpse of a shadow pulling itself away from the others, a small figure, caught in the fray. Was it Timmy? "Mom!" But as she reached for him, the fleeting figure vanished, swallowed by the tide of darkness. Sarah's heart dropped. "What do you want from me?" she howled, rage mingling with fear. "You," the shadows sang, their melody a deranged lullaby. "You are the key." Sarah stumbled backward, her mind racing. She knew this was more than just shadows, it was a living thing, aware of her every fear, feeding off it, growing stronger. She felt the ground quake beneath her, voices folding into one another, making a sickening chorus that echoed with the promise of despair. Could she unravel the truth? To find Timmy, she'd have to face the horror, waiting within the very heart of darkness. And it was calling her name. "Step deeper. Sarah, it's more than what you think." The whispers hung in the air, thick and rancid, urging her into the blackness. The storm outside howled, and the night grew darker. What secrets lay beyond the threshold, buried in the shadows? Would she dare find out, or would she succumb to the inviting darkness? The shadows closed in, wrapping her tightly as she teetered on the edge of decision. The shadows tightened their grip, smothering Sarah in a confusing swirl of agony and despair. The pulsating walls closed in on her, and the rancid smell of rot intensified. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, a taunting reminder that time was slipping away as she faced an unbearable truth. "Timmy," she shouted again, but the name was swallowed by the darkness. The air crackled with electric tension, and the laughter encircled her, fluttering in and out with an almost playful malice. "Come play with us," the voices hissed, an echoing chorus of despair, tinged with something sinister. Sarah's chest tightened. Their joy was not innocent. It was a hunger, and they feasted on fear, their favorite delicacy. "Please," she begged, scrambling desperately for the glimmer of light that had guided her at the beginning. But it flickered erratically, like a candle in a storm, taunting her feeble attempts to grasp hold of hope. "Leave her." A voice broke through the chorus, deep and commanding. Sarah spun around as an immense shadow stepped forward, darker than the rest, its form shifting and swirling. The other shadows recoiled, whispers dissolving into a low, jittery hum. "Who are you?" Sarah managed, her voice trembling. "I am the one they fear," it declared, its eyes smoldering like embers, haloed by the remaining whispers. "They lie, they take. But you have the power to choose." A strange, heavy sense of gravity settled around her, grounding her amidst the chaos. "Choose what?" she asked, her voice shaky but daring. "Join us and find your son, or face the truth that lives in the scalding whispers of your soul." "What truth?" She stepped back, doubt encroaching. What could be worse than this horror? Suddenly, the shadows surged, wrenching towards her with a collective shriek. "Join us! The darkness will shelter you. Timmy is waiting." Their cries blended into a roaring wind, swirling around her like a tempest. "No!" Sarah cried, reclaiming her focus. She turned to the foreboding figure that stood against them. "Tell me how to save him. Tell me what I need to do." "Face your past, Sarah," it rasped. "Only then will you find him. Inside the shadows, hide your fears, and reveal the light." The words coiled in her mind, slithering through her thoughts. Fear, the very thing they thrived upon. The thing she had to confront. Before she could process what that meant, the darkness surged again, a wave crashing against her. Faces twisted in the shadows reached for her, each rotten visage filled with sorrow and anger. "You can't escape. You will regret this." Sarah closed her eyes, her heart racing, seeking inner strength. The suffocating panic rose, but she forced it down, battling the crushing darkness. She had to dig deep into herself, expose the fears she buried long ago. "All right, I'll face it," she shouted into the storm. "I'm not afraid of you." For a brief heartbeat, silence fell, as if the entire realm waited for her next move. Only the distant echo of Timmy's voice remained, a frightened, desperate call that sliced through the heavy quiet. "Mom, I need you." In that moment, clarity flashed through her like lightning. She thought of Timmy's bright smile, his trusting eyes. It ignited something fierce within her. The past she'd hidden in the dark felt suddenly palpable, shadowy but real, memories of loss and regret wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. With fierce resolve, she stepped forward, ready to unravel the twisted threads binding her. "Give him back," she demanded of the shadows. "I will confront whatever it takes." As her voice rang out, an incandescent glow erupted from within, pushing against the darkness, illuminating the vast chamber. The shadows hissed and recoiled, caught off guard by the flickering flame of her spirit. But just when she thought the tide had turned, the darkness surged violently, retaliating with greater ferocity. It all spun wildly, her world veering from light to shadows in dizzying bouts. "Timmy!" she shouted, the name hanging in the air, laced with unyielding determination. But something shifted in the dark, something menacing. A part of her could sense it. "Will you find him, or will you lose yourself?" the shadow whispered, an eerie question that resonated in her bones. Could this storm of darkness consume her? Or was she truly ready to face what waited at the heart of fear? With each step deeper into the unknown, she felt the shadows pulse with raw anticipation. Like a lure, it beckoned her to the brink. What awaited her within the folds of darkness? An answer, or something far worse? Sarah felt a jolt in the air, a shift that sent shivers down her spine. The shadows quivered as she took another step forward, torn between dread and determination. "I will find him," she yelled, gripping the last strands of her courage. The darkness shrieked in response, a chorus of torment carried on the wind. "Mom!" Timmy's voice sliced through, clearer this time, more desperate. Each echo deepened her resolve, but also the fear lurking in her heart. Willing herself to remember that smile, She focused on the warmth of his laughter. She was ready. She had to be. Face your fears. The shadow interjected, its voice rumbling like thunder rolling across a darkened sky. They are the key to your freedom. Let us do this, Sarah muttered, more to herself than anyone. The shadows writhed as she marched forward, each step threatening to swallow her whole. The air grew thick, almost liquid, wrapping around her like a cold, clammy embrace. Memories sprang forth, unwelcome ghosts clawing at her mind. Images of darkness in her life, the day they lost Timmy's father, the guilt that had buried her in despair. The regret settled heavy in her stomach, creeping into her bones. The whispers returned, now more insistent, burrowing beneath her skin. Join us, Sarah. The past is warm and welcoming. They coaxed, their words sharp like daggers. Timmy will be safe with us. No, she screamed, clenching her fists. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The urge to turn and run barreled through her. But Timmy needed her. She wouldn't abandon him, not now, not ever. Planting her feet firmly, she summoned the light flickering within her, letting it extend outward. Enough! She boomed into the suffocating air. Her voice cracked like a whip, echoing against the walls of this dark prison. The shadows screeched, recoiling in a wave of darkness. But still, they pressed onward. Your light is weak, you're weak. They lashed back. Faces morphed in the darkness, twisted, anguished. They reached out with ghostly hands, chilling her skin. What are you hiding, Sarah? A voice taunted, as familiar as her own. It was the voice she had long buried beneath layers of shame. Face it, face me. Clenching her jaw, Sarah focused. This wasn't just about fear. It was about confronting her past. I'm not afraid anymore, she declared, each word a flame licking at the shadows. She thought of Timmy, her boy who should be laughing, not lost in this nightmare. Suddenly, lights flared in the chamber, illuminating the grotesque forms hidden in the dark. The shadows hesitated, surprised, as the pale light cast away the veil of despair surrounding her. Timmy's laughter echoed faintly, a glimmer of hope in the icy grip of fear. Mom, where are you? Roots of despair twisted within her, but just as quickly, tendrils of courage unfurled. With every ounce of strength, she reached for the light within her love for Timmy, her determination to break free from the shackles of the past. She felt an energy swell, pulsating against the darkness, igniting a fire. But the shadows roared in fury, a surge of rage that crashed against her newfound resolve. You cannot escape what is inside you, they howled, clinging and wrapping tighter around her. The glow around her flickered uncertainly, struggling to resist the overwhelming heaviness. Sarah's heart raced as doubt seeped in like ice water. If she failed, the darkness would drag her and Timmy into a void of eternal despair. In a chaotic whirl, the shadows lunged at her. Face the truth, Sarah. What do you fear most? They hissed, their breath threatening to extinguish the tiny flame she now clung to. With every breath, memories swirled around her: regret, grief, and the gnawing guilt of feeling like a failure. Would she truly have to confront the very pain she tried to escape? You and your choices brought us here. Embrace it, the shadows screamed. Panic clawed at her throat. This wasn't just about Timmy anymore. It was about her. With each heartbeat, time raced against her. Could she unearth the truth and confront her demons? Wrapped in the pulsating chaos, Sarah drew in a deep breath. The challenge before her felt insurmountable, but she had no choice. I'll face it all, she hissed, her heart rebounding against despair. Whatever it takes. As the darkness howled with rage, Sarah squared her shoulders, ready to confront the truth. The air thickened, a tension so raw it was palpable. But who or what was waiting for her on the other side? Was she truly prepared to face the shadows that clung to her soul? Or would she be consumed by the very darkness she sought to vanquish? The shadows loomed larger as Sarah stepped deeper into their enclave, their whispers clawing at her thoughts, peeling back her layers of defense. Each word was a serrated blade, digging into her resolve. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribcage, a frantic drum calling her to retreat. But giving in was not an option. "Where are you, Timmy?" she called out, voice edged with desperation. The air shimmered, vibrating with her fear, honing in on her core dread. The darkness responded with a cacophony of laughter, mocking her plea, a symphony of despair that chilled her to the bone. "Mommy!" Timmy's voice rang out again, distant yet urgent. Every syllable pinned Sarah in place, drawing her forward against the swirling chaos. A hint of warmth flickered somewhere far ahead, but the shadows seized her legs, pulling her down like quicksand. "Face it," they snarled, urgency twisting their tones. "What is the true darkness inside you?" She shook her head fiercely, limbs trembling. "No, I won't let you take me." Flames of determination flickered in her chest, igniting her spirit momentarily before the shadows snuffed it out. Ethereal hands grasped at her mind, forcing her to relive her dark memories. The first loss hit her husband's funeral, an empty casket, echoing a promise unkept. "You were supposed to protect us, Sarah," he whispered, his face twisted in sorrow. Guilt intertwined with the shadows, creeping up her spine and crushing her voice. "Relive the moment, Sarah," they howled. "Feel his death again." The howl echoed violently, and the chamber darkened, the illusion of light diminishing rapidly as she found herself standing there again, battered by disbelief and despair. "No!" she screamed, digging her nails into her palm, drawing blood. "You won't take this from me." A burst of will surged within her, a protective barrier against the memories they wished to unleash. She envisioned Timmy's face, sparkling with laughter, chasing fireflies in the backyard. His joy was a lifeline, a shimmering beacon to keep her tethered to reality. "Let him go!" The shadows shrieked, their voices jagged threads of anguish, scratching at her resolve. Yes, lost, like all the others. The air thickened, suffocating her, twisting into knots around Sarah's throat. Panic surged hot, igniting every nerve. She was not just battling darkness. It was a war with her inner demons, the fears she buried deep for so long. The menacing hands of despair squeezed around her, threatening to erase her will. "What do you really fear, Sarah? A mother's failure?" "No." The denial felt primal. "I wasn't a failure then, and I'm not now." With these words, she summoned the remaining flicker of light inside her, forcing it to swell, a radiant sun pushing back against the endless night. Just as it seemed the tide would shift, the shadows convulsed, writhing like a living mass, each of them twisting to form monstrous faces, reflecting her deepest fears. "Your choices have led you here, to darkness." They lunged forward, teeth glinting, shadows spiraling into snarling grotesqueries. Amid the chaos, she felt her foot slip on something cold, slick with moisture. Panic skittered through her like ice fingers. She stumbled, grasping for anything solid until she grasped a rough stone outcrop, anchoring herself. But the shadows continued their assault, howling with fury and frustration. "Your truth will be your doom," they echoed, but Sarah could feel the warmth of her memories seeping into the cold. With renewed resolve, she cried out, "I will not be consumed by you." She twisted the stone in her hand, feeling its rough edges dig into her palm. "I am here for Timmy, for love." An explosion of light erupted from her, a beacon cutting a path toward the exit from this nightmare. It banished the writhing horrors that surrounded her. The shadows shrieked, consumed by the light, but she knew it wasn't over. As the chamber began to crack and splinter, she propelled herself deeper, feeling the thrum of her heart drown out the howls. But in that moment of escape, an echo of Timmy's laughter floated back. To her, fragile yet persistent. She realized with a sickening twist that the shadows had drawn her deeper than she expected. When she stumbled upon an archway, the darkness cracked like broken glass, shards shining bright against her skin. She wasn't just facing the specters of the past. She was about to confront something that could either free her or cost her everything. "I'm coming for you, Timmy," she shouted, taking a step through the archway, the world shifting around her. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find Timmy, or had the shadows altered her fate forever? As Sarah stepped through the archway, the air shifted. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She squinted into the void, feeling as if she were being pulled through a vortex, time and space bending in unpredictable ways. Her pulse quickened, fear coiling tighter inside her. Emerging from the archway, she found herself in a dim forest, twisted trees towering ominously. The ground was soft, like mud, sucking at her shoes with each step. An unsettling silence enveloped her, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves, as if something unseen was watching. "Timmy," she called again, her voice cracking. She felt the weight of dread crash into her like a tidal wave. What if he wasn't here? Panic surged anew, threatening to swallow her whole. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed through the trees. It reminded her of fireflies, flickering with a tantalizing hope. She moved toward it, heart racing. But then came a sound that froze her in place. A low, guttural growl, reverberating through the stillness. No more laughter, only the echo of something primal in the shadows. "Timmy," she whispered, barely able to breathe. But the growl grew deeper, like a warning, as if the forest itself was alive, guarding its secrets. She glanced over her shoulder, the darkness behind her more menacing than ever. The shadows hung at the edges of her vision, twisting and lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness. Fighting back her fear, she pressed on, the glow becoming brighter. As she moved closer, the light transformed into a circle of luminescence, pulsating gently. In the center stood a small, crooked figure hunched over, obscured by a veil of cascading hair. "Timmy?" she called out hesitantly, her voice laced with an urgency she didn't feel ready for. What if this silhouette was an illusion? As she stepped closer, the figure turned. It wasn't Timmy. The face that emerged was barely human, a grotesque mix of childlike innocence and something decidedly sinister. Hollow eyes gazed at her, and a smile split the face wound across its lips. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, the voice echoing in the stillness, tremors of menace wrapping around every word. "The shadows will come for you, and they always take what they want." Her heart raced. "Where is he? Where is my son?" The figure pointed a bony finger deeper into the woods. "Follow the light, but the path is treacherous. Not all shadows can be vanquished." A chill danced down her spine as dread pooled in her stomach. If this thing knew anything about Timmy, she had to take the chance. "Get out of my way," she cried, shoving past the apparition, intent on the light ahead. But the shadows thickened, swirling around her legs, creeping up like snakes, biting at her ankles. "You can't escape your fate, Sarah. The darkness is hungry for you." She sprinted forward, desperate to break free. The glow hung just ahead, almost within reach. But as she ran, splintered flashes of light sparked behind her, a cacophony of screams ringing through the forest. "Timmy!" she yelled, her voice cracking. "I'm coming." The light flickered, swaying in and out of focus as the shadows surged. With every footfall, she could feel otherworldly hands clawing at her, their whispers now a distinct melody of despair. The ache of memories clawed at her mind, images of Timmy's last smile before he vanished flickered painfully through her thoughts. And then, just as Sarah reached the edge of the light, it flickered violently, dimming. The shadows lunged, their forms coalescing into one massive figure, a monstrous abstraction of all her fears. "Face your demons," the figure bellowed, sounding like 100 tortured souls in unison. "Please," Sarah screamed, instinctively stepping back. "I won't let you take him." But the shadows closed in, the monstrous facades bearing down on her like a storm. And in that moment, Sarah knew this was not just about saving Timmy. It was a battle for her soul, a war she couldn't afford to lose. The light flickered one last time, and she thrust herself toward it, a scream bubbling up inside. Would it be enough to banish the shadows? She dove forward, the fabric of her fate unraveling around her. What happened next would change everything. Would she find Timmy, or had she stepped into a trap from which there was no escape? The world exploded in a blinding brightness as Sarah plunged into the light. For a moment, there was only warmth surging, embracing warmth that seemed to wrap around her like a mother's arms. She squinted, desperate to catch her breath as her heart raced. The shadows were just behind her, clawing at the edges of her consciousness, but unable to penetrate the purity of the light. But where was Timmy? Panic clawed at her throat as she took hesitant steps forward, striving to keep the light close, as if it were a lifeline tethering her to hope. Timmy, she called out, the name echoing into the clearing she now stood in, a place both familiar and eerily foreign. The air held a paradox of peace and underlying dread, and for a moment, all was silent. Then she saw it. A figure emerged in the distance, a small silhouette against the brightened scene. One heartbeat too, then adrenaline surged through her veins as the shadow in her heart shifted from fear to pure determination. "Timmy!" she yelled, racing toward him, heart pounding like a war drum, resonating with love and desperation. But as she got closer, dread trickled in. It was still that grotesque visage, that twisted mix of innocence and malice. Timmy was not there. "Why did you come?" the apparition said, its voice chilling her to the bone. It stepped forward, its smile stretching wide, revealing teeth like shards of glass, glinting in the vibrant light. "You shouldn't be here. The darkness will consume you both and oh." Sarah screamed, pushing past the grotesquerie, anger fueling her strength, her heart described with love for her real son. "I will not let him go." "Where is Timmy?" The world trembled, the ground quaking as those damned shadows surged into the clearing, clawing for her, desperate to reclaim what they thought belonged to them. But she stood resolute, the warmth of the glowing light echoing in her chest. "Face your truth, Sarah." The shadows howled, voices melding into a wailing cacophony. "Face the darkness." "No," she shouted back, defiance rising from deep within her. "My truth is one of strength and love." She tore her gaze away from the hideous forms surrounding her, and focused on the glimmering sphere in the heart of the light her love. Her hope, she felt the pull of despair wane, shaking free of the tendrils of shadow snaking toward her. "Timmy," she cried again, pouring every ounce of love and yearning into that name. "I won't let you be lost. I am here." Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, their forms twisting wildly, screeching as if her resolve was harming them. Her heart thundered in sync with the enveloping light, and she understood. The past, the fears, the guilt, they would only have power over her if she let them with all her might. She stood firm and extended her hand towards the bright essence surrounding her, letting it grow and pulse, pushing the shadows back into their void. They shrieked, and in their screams, Sarah finally understood. They were her fears, her pain, her regrets, all morphing into darkness. But they didn't define her. Her grief didn't have to consume her. It could coexist with the brightness of love that had always been there. "Timmy," she called, her voice softening. The luminescence spread wider, igniting the air with warmth and hope. And in that moment she saw him. From the depths of the shadows, beyond the veil of despair, Timmy materialized, a shimmering silhouette of innocence, filled with love, and relief broke like dawn in her heart. "Mom!" he cried, bounding toward her with open arms. "Timmy!" Her fear faded away in an explosion of joy, and she scooped him up, holding him tighter than she had ever held anything in her life. "I was scared." He shivered against her, but she felt him breathe, the warmth of life and love surging through them both. "I know, baby, but we're together now." The darkness shrieked, twisting a final time as her love pulsed against it. With a fury born of pure will, she shouted, "You have no power here." In a brilliant burst of light, the shadows shattered, cracks splitting like glass, echoing through the air. Like a haunting dream, whispers faded, swallowed by an eternal silence. As the final fragments of darkness faded, leaving remnants that could never reclaim what they lost, Sarah stepped back, heart swelling with defiance. She dusted herself off, looking at Timmy's bright eyes, her world restored. The storm above stopped abruptly, and the moon peeked through, washing over them with a silver glow. "I'm so proud of you," he mumbled sleepily, warmth enveloping them like a blanket of safety. The shadows no longer crowded the edges of her mind. The storm had shed its sweet torment. They stood together, alive and unshackled, ready to face whatever came next. As they turned to leave, Sarah felt the last tendrils of darkness fall away, like shedding skin. Together, they walked into the soft night, ready for unknown adventures with the strongest heart connected forever, a bond unbreakable by shadow. The embrace of light and love whispered promises of new beginnings, as the moon cast a gilded glow over their path. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means the world, and only true fans know how important it is.